When the Night Comes Out presents Jump Scares. Today's bite-sized horror is entitled Homecoming. Written by Bryan W. Alaspa. Narrated and produced by Allie James. He looks up into the gray sky and stares past the barren trees. He's coming. Thomas is coming home. They found out yesterday when a family friend came in from town. Since the phone lines went down, they have to rely on the ham radio operators that have set up shop in town. Most of the town is abandoned, but there is one store that stays open, and inside that is a ham radio set that is monitored 24 hours a day. Thomas is coming home. His wife is in the kitchen. Thomas should be arriving today, and she is preparing for the meal. Thomas was always a good boy. He always did well for his parents. He went off to fight the fight with his friends. He still remembered how proud he was when he saw his son in his uniform. Then the wars came. Then the biological stuff. Then the plants died, and the crops died, and the sky turned gray, and the big cities were destroyed, and the plagues came. They thought he was dead, and then came the message. He was fine. He'd been north, in Canada, and had remained healthy. Things were better up there. They were not great, but there was still hope. Many other countries had given up hope. He clutched at his stomach. Food had been so scarce. He and his wife had gotten so thin. They had canned food. She'd always been good about canning, and they had a huge supply of the stuff, but that was running out. Still, there she was in the kitchen, preparing for a feast, using more cans. Thomas would be here soon, big and strong and looking healthy. He licked his lips, imagining the feast to come. Thomas was a good son. He always had been. They watched the television as the world crumbled. The sky was going out. Whatever bombs and things that they had set off was destroying the atmosphere or something. Some scientists thought that they could fix things, but others thought it was hopeless. The politicians ranted and raved, but things just kept getting worse. Food was scarce. People were dying in droves. It was only a matter of time. If they could just get some meat. He licked his lips thinking about roasted turkeys and big slices of good roast beef. At one time, when he was young, they had cows. Those cows were long gone. Most of the cows were long gone. So were the sheep and pigs and even most of the dogs and cats and birds. The world was dying. Soon, he figured, the planet would just be another barren rock floating in the endless void. But not before Thomas came home. Maybe Thomas could make things better. At least, he thought, for a little while. Maybe he could make them better for a while. How long before it got bad again, though? And what would they do then? He squinted into the distance. A figure was there. Just a shape, standing and moving slowly across the barren fields. Clouds of dust kicked up from his footsteps. Most of the plants had turned to dust. He shimmered. He knew right away that the shape was Thomas. You knew your son's shape. Thomas was always such a good boy. He watched from the porch. He thought about calling out to his wife, but he let her work in the kitchen. He let Thomas get close. He got close enough that he could see Thomas's face. He was still strong. He smiled. He waved. Thomas waved back. Then he stood up, a proud father welcoming his son. He stepped off the porch. He kept his eyes on Thomas, noticing how healthy his son looked, how big he was, how strong he looked. Meanwhile, his own clothes hung off his body, and his walk was slow, shambling, staggering. They met in the front yard. Thomas said hello, and his father smiled. He opened his arms and Thomas fell into them. He told Thomas he was a good boy. He told Thomas that he was a good son. Then he pulled the knife out of his belt. Thomas gasped, his eyes wide, when it buried to the hilt in his back. He fell to the ground and was gone seconds later. It took both him and his wife to drag him into the backyard. He stood there later, looking at the meat roasting over the fire he built in the backyard. He could not stop salivating. The meat blackened. The smell was amazing. Inside, she made final preparations and also cut up the rest of the meat so it could be frozen. He watched the meat closely. He licked his lips. Thomas had always been a good boy. Always a good boy. Thanks for listening to When the Night Comes Out Jump Scares. Be sure to like, share, and review. You can binge our first 2 seasons of full-length stories now. Until next time, try to stay safe when the night comes out.